But at least I want to play exactly what Joni Ernst was asked after she had that meeting with Pete Hegseth, because people are curious about what seems to be a change. But as Ryan rightfully points out, he omitted the word combat. Let's listen.
Did he commit to keeping women in their current roles in the military?
He is very supportive of women in the military. It is one thing that we discussed.
So he's changed his position? He's changed his position on that?
The well-timed closing of the elevator door, Elise. So what do you make of that? I mean, is this going to be a continuing problem for him? Is the message from supporters he's reformed? I don't know. Tell me how you view this right now.
Chris, I have been surprised almost that there has been so little attention to this issue, and I'm glad that right now this is surfacing over. I mean, he just is such a problematic candidate that there are so many other issues, but this is a fundamental issue that the Secretary of Defense has to speak out on, and he has to be supportive of women in combat. He can't support going backwards in history. His views are just very retrograde, considering that, you know, the Army allowed women to be in combat zones starting with World War II, and it was a huge part of why America managed to win the war. And that was a societal change, and now Pete Hegseth can't be seen to be rolling that back. And he's got a long time before he has actual confirmation hearings, considering that Trump isn't going to be inaugurated for over a month. And so far, he has been kind of a heat shield for other nominees who also have their own problems. But this is not going to go away, and it's a fundamental problem with his candidacy for the position.
So, Phil, do you think this attention on Hegseth, and it's been a lot, has kind of provided some breathing room for the other nominees? There can only be one major headline about these nominees, arguably per day. Has he served a purpose for the other folks who were controversial?
I think that's a pretty perceptive theory, Chris. A few weeks ago, it was Matt Gaetz, the nominee for Attorney General, who was in the spotlight and ultimately had to withdraw his nomination. Pete Hegseth has been getting a lot of the scrutiny, both from the media, but also from the Republican senators up at the Capitol the last week or so. And that has created, to your point, some breathing room for other nominees who, you know, in normal times would be considered fairly controversial, both because of their backgrounds and because of their policy, views that have been stated publicly. I'm thinking of RFK Jr. for the Secretary of HHS, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, and Kash Patel for the Director of the FBI. There are a number of picks that Trump has made that I think if they had been made in isolation would have drawn a lot of scrutiny from the Senate and certainly media headlines. And I think a lot of that's been overwhelmed because of the defense pick.
Yeah, there are also experiential questions, right? Do they have the background that's required to do the job? So let's talk about one of those, Elise. DNI hopeful, Tulsi Gabbard. She started her rounds on Capitol Hill by meeting with defense hawks, including Senator Mike Rounds, and this is what he had to say.
I think there's a path forward. This was her first opportunity to sit down and to actually have a member of the Senate really give her advice about how to handle these open meetings that are coming up. She's going to have a meeting publicly with the Intelligence Committee, and then she's going to have a closed one afterwards. And they're going to be tough because this is a case of where people will ask her questions about her knowledge of the intelligence community, about the information that's out there, and they'll ask her about some of her past statements.
So let's assume she makes it through these meetings. She gets to a confirmation hearing, Elise. What do you think her allies have to prepare her for?
Well, she certainly is going to have to be prepared to answer for her past support, her statements in support of Bashir Assad in the aftermath of the fall of his regime, because the crimes that are going to come out of that regime are going to make any modicum of past support all the more horrific, just because we have not even begun to scratch the surface of the depth of depravity of that regime, and it's all going to be coming out into the forefront. I do, though, think that overall her nomination is in a stronger position than some other nominees. She has allies from her time on Capitol Hill. She still has a top secret security clearance that hasn't been revoked from her service in the National Guard. So I do think that in the one sense, she is in a slightly stronger position than Pete Hegseth.